What are the specializations in anesthesia? Just like in medicine, you can imagine that there are different surgical types, right? From basic sedation to advanced procedures like heart and brain surgery. Our training in school caters for not specialization, but exposure and experience at the fundamental level to these different surgical areas. There are concentrations or what we call rotations, clinical rotations, that emphasize expertise in these areas during the training.
In a modern hospital, it's almost impossible to run without the services of anesthetists. Some people call them anesthesiologists. I don't know the difference. But in this episode, I want us to go to an expert to learn how the Association of Cameroonian Nurse Anesthetists, how they're working so hard to close the gap between the advanced countries and Cameroon, which is an emerging or a developing nation in Africa. We have the great pleasure of having with us Dr. Christian Tekwe, all the way from the great city of Houston. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Dr. Tekwe. I don't know, is it morning in Houston now? It's been a long time I've not been to Houston. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? What time is it in Houston now?
It is morning.
Morning.
Gideon
cool.
from the Story Warrior. Thank you for having me. It's morning in Houston.
All right. I'm glad. I'm delighted it's morning. So there is clearly a gap, but I cannot articulate it because I am not someone who is part of the medical community. Years ago, I was a fire captain. I understand the importance of anesthesia in the context of a hospital, especially when there are severe cases. But you are closer to the fire. You are closer to the issues. As we go along today, I want you to help us understand, is there a gap, and how serious is that gap between the developed and the developing world?
Well, thank you once again for this opportunity to speak about what we do at the Association of Cameroonian Nurse Anesthetists in America, ACNA. Indeed, there is a gap. It's a huge gap between developing countries at different degrees and advanced nations when it comes to the provision of anesthesia care, or perioperative care, as we call it in anesthesia. The gap is significant. It's wider in other countries than others. Unfortunately, Cameroon stands at the bottom of this gap. There is a significant lack of resources, equipment, and even standards, let alone sufficient regular training to update the practitioner on recent practices and protocols in anesthesia and anesthesia care.
Wow, that hurts my heart because every once in a while I have to go to Cameroon. I know a lot of friends that do business in Cameroon and other parts of Africa. So you're telling me if something really bad happens while you're there and you need some help, some clear medical help, the chances of you getting the best quality of health as far as anesthesia is concerned in Cameroon, it is not up to par. Is that what you're saying? I want us to set that record straight because I know a lot of friends that go to Cameroon to do business.
I must first of all recognize the valiance of the people who are on the ground. With very little training, the anesthesia providers on the ground are doing what we see from this angle of the world as really remarkable. But it is true that being in the country, and if you have any significant medical emergency or a need for surgical operations, you will not get the same kind of care that you have here. Now, it is not to say that you're going to be in harm's way immediately, but there are certain systems and protocols that you and I enjoy living in the United States that you're not going to have access to. Cameroon. And part of it is also my experience. Yes, I know that we travel to Cameroon and we think about our family members who are back there. But I was there even during one of our mission trips, and I had an accident, an automobile accident. And I went to the hospital, and I was given an overdose of a painkiller that I've never received. And I went into respiratory depression and was almost, I was so sedated that my oxygen saturation dropped. And the protocol that we have here in monitoring, even more basic monitoring, checking and assessing or intervening
Mm-hmm.
was obviously very lacking. I had to get myself out of the hospital after 8 hours, and I had to self-prescribe, in a sense, get Narcan to reverse a narcotic, which was given to me in high doses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had it been somebody who has no idea what that medication could have been or know how to intervene,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I would have died necessarily, but the consequences could have been much more different.
Oh my God.
Than what,
Oh my goodness. That is a very, very painful close brush. Because if it was me, and I can't tell the difference between Nivaquine and aspirin, and I can't tell the difference. I just look at it's a tablet. That's it. I would have been assuming that I'm getting the very best, not knowing that I'm probably under the influence of a severe overdose. But I'm comforted by the fact that you, as the president of the association, and your fellow members are working hard day and night to close that gap, that very, very visible gap between what obtains on the ground there and what happens in the advanced countries. Can you talk to us about some of the work that you're doing in the area of education to close that gap, and at the same time raising the standards from the bottom?
Well, locally on the ground, we are very fortunate to have very engaged partners in helping us bridging this gap, as you rightly put it. We of the Association of Cameroonian Nurse Anesthetists, of course, of Cameroonian origin. Most of us are born in Cameroon. We experience the challenges, the difficulties, and the shortfall of the healthcare system, and especially in anesthesia care. And so we realized that we could not, from here, carry that education and implant it in Cameroon. We needed local partners. And what we've been able to do is to help galvanize the membership of nurse anesthetists in Cameroon into an organization, which is now the Cameroonian Association of Nurse Anesthetists themselves, into a structure with leadership, and also being able to successfully plan and organize 3 conferences of nurse anesthetists from across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And there we provide training and education from basic things like CPR, which we take for granted granted in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, to intervene if somebody has a chance, if they've had like what we call a cardiac arrest or pulmonary or any breathing problems for that matter that could lead to a cardiac arrest.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually provide certification thanks to some of our members who have that capacity to train for certification from the American Heart Association. So these conferences, we plan and organize them every other year. Right now, we did them every year before, but every other year we do that, and then focus on key areas of need and work with also other local practitioners who have the expertise, so that we can work together instead of us bringing our own expertise from here that has no bearing on the realities on the ground. And we have done that 3 times. And for the very first time this year, the Cameroonian Association will host, with our support, their own conference of nurse anesthetists and put the resources together, because our goal is to eventually have them build the capacity to be able to do most of what we have done before in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the second pillar of our focus in Cameroon, which is very fundamental to our mission, is our partnership with the University of Boya, thanks to the leadership there, especially the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences. He has been incredible in his support. Shout out to you, Doc. As well as
shout out UB.
To UB, exactly.
I think I'm familiar a little bit familiar with just a bit with UB.
Yes. So we've been able to partner with the University of Boya to create a master's in anesthesia and critical care program. And this, we're graduating for this year, the first batch of this program from the university. And that for us is really fundamental, because providing occasional training from us here in the form of a mission trip does not provide a long-term foundation for the improvement of anesthesia care in Cameroon. So we support that program. We work with the University of Boya to develop the curriculum, and also make trips once in a while. Some of our members do provide support when the students, the first batch of students, were ready for clinicals. that is to say, exposure to the real environment out in the hospital. We had to help support them transition into that area. We have also provided books and material for them to be able to get hands-on knowledge or direct access to advanced practice foundations in anesthesia care on the global stage. And so these are the key pillars of what we have been able to accomplish on the ground. Of course, there's more to be done. There's more that we have to do, but that's what we're doing in Cameroon right now with a lot of support from the ground, but also a good feedback as to the impact, both on the practitioner level and the patient care. And not just to forget also that we provide equipment. We've had donors from the United States who have been able to help us with critical supplies, especially in airway, let's say the intubating blades, as well
as management,
as breathing tubes and laryngomass airways, LMAs, ambu bags, all these critical supplies that we have been able to put in the hands of our partners on the ground have made significant changes in the way they practice, but also in what is possible for them to accomplish.
So it looks like there's quite an extensive collaboration between your association in the United States and your partner organizations on the ground.
That is correct.
And if they're now beginning to take the reins of running their own conference, we could say that you have succeeded in raising the standards, or you are in the process of raising the standards, because the most challenging thing is every year you have to make the mission trips. Every year you have to donate. But if you don't succeed to transfer expertise to them, then you are just encouraging the parasitic model. But what you're saying here is that you want to make them sustainable so they can run their own affairs, and you only go to support where there's a need. Is that what you're saying? I want us to be clear about that, because a lot of people are suffering from donation fatigue. A lot of people are suffering from mission fatigue. And I get a sense that ACNA is operating differently. You want to empower them so they can take care of their own affairs, and you don't want to sound like you're micromanaging their affairs. Is that what you're aiming at?
Absolutely. You're right on point. I have the experience of working in Cameroon before I came here with the International Relief Friendship Foundation, which was affiliated to the United Nations. So I have seen the failure of organizations that come on the ground with a savoir-faire from the outside and want to impose.
Like, we know it all. We know it all because we're coming from the first world. So you
exactly.
Yeah.
And they fizzle with time. And as soon as the funding,
runs
out, and then or they leave the country, the people are not left where the goodwill of the organization from the outside left them. They're left farther behind, sometimes even than where they were before they even had the help, because they now have no
retrogression.
They are retrogressive, as a matter of fact. They don't have any foundations as to what they can do. They've left the realities, the adaptability that they had in their previous environments. So, but at ACNA, we did recognize initially that not only was it not feasible for us to continue to provide, we're all volunteers. I'm actually having a full-time job and other businesses to run, and so do our members. So if we sacrifice that time, we wanted to see a reciprocation of this effort from the ground, but also wanted to help implant the structures and systems with motivated individuals that can sustain this program. And so both on the ground and here in the United States, that's been our focus, the sustainability of our initiatives on the ground. So our model is to help create structures that can sustain that, but also to ensure that we also go there, don't cause harm. We're also working with people who have very limited resources. We cannot carry our savoir-faire and on them. When we are designing our programs, both in terms of the education as well as the hands-on exposure to our equipment here, we have to match with the reality of what they know, what they aspire to become. At the same time, there is a conundrum, because you don't want to leave them where they are, right? You want to challenge but not so far as to the extent that they have no basis or no foundation to operate once you leave.
Yes, yes. That's a very important understanding that you have inbuilt into your collaboration. It's one thing to challenge a man, but if you challenge them and they go so fast and they cannot sustain that, then when you're not there, what happens? The system, the bottom falls out.
That's
It
correct.
collapses. So it's important that you have identified that maybe thanks to your previous experience with United Nations or working within the continent. But I want us to move one step further. Talk to us about the origin of AGNA, because it is very easy for professionals who come from developing world to America, who are highly paid. Like we know that nurse anesthetists are very highly paid, to get comfortable and say, you know what, I don't care. I'm here to take care of myself. I don't care what happens back there, because after I'm here, I'm living with my family, and to a large extent, you could turn a blind eye. Talk to us about the founding of that association, because I think, if my sources are right, you served a pioneering role in the creation of that organization. Talk to us about that and why that was necessary.
Well, I would not claim a pioneering role per se. We were a group of course, Cameroonians, motivated by the desire to want to give back. And one of our founding members, actually the pioneer, the initiator of this the genesis of our association, is Dr. Sylvia Egber, who is a close friend of ours as well.
Mhm,
It was the original genesis of the idea of ACNA.
mhm,
And it started in a living room, and we decided that we wanted to be able to give back. Primarily, the focus initially was to help those Cameroonians in the United States who could aspire to become CRNAs, because
mhm.
we realized that it's a highly competitive environment.
I understand what is CRNA, but please, can you explain it in the interest of our viewers, listeners? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So, CRNA is a certified registered nurse anesthesiologist.
There you
So,
go.
so these are nurses who uh, have to have worked in the ICU for about 2 years at least, and then apply to graduate school, which is now a doctoral level training,
Mhm,
and then they go to school specializing and focusing only in anesthesia.
mhm,
So Dr. Sylvia Egber generated this idea, and we came together, and not only in Houston but across the country, and decided that we wanted to help the community, give back to the community in the sense supporting those who have the aspiration to go into anesthesia school, and then but also with a vision towards giving back to Cameroon, where we came from, because we all know the realities back in Cameroon.
mhm,
So that's the foundation. But primarily here as well, it's not just supporting those to go to school, but those who have already graduated, those of us who are already working, help strengthen their professional foundations in terms of continuing education. We organize every year 2 meetings. The annual conference, by the way, one is happening in your city, Dallas. In
Dallas, of
on
all places. All right.
Yeah.
I'm make a note for myself. I
um,
would definitely come out, but please,
so
please tell your guys, promise not to knock me out.
okay.
I don't want nobody to knock me out. I just want to put that very clearly.
All
I'm
right.
coming there to learn, to
Okay.
have a good
Sure.
time. No
Sure.
one should knock me out,
We
because
will knock you out. We'll make sure we don't have any proper fall, no verses, effect. No.
please, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, with
So
that assurance, I promise I'll be there.
yeah. So April 11 to 12 will be in Dallas, and this is actually of particular attention to nurses who want to go to anesthesia school,
Mm,
especially those who are already in the ICU. We do have an arm of our association that's focused on supporting nurses, preparing them, educating them, and preparing them into getting into anesthesia program, both in
mhm,
terms of the application process and preparing them, do mock interviews, and
mhm,
helping them through anesthesia school. Some of us in the leadership in association at AGNA are actually faculty into anesthesia programs. So that
mhm,
gives us first-hand knowledge of what is required. Now, this is
mhm.
not limited to Cameroonians. You do not have to be a Cameroonian to come to the conference. You do not have to. I'm sure you might help us also post a link to the registration for this conference.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have that link so that
I would
uh,
appreciate.
because our viewers, we have people from all backgrounds, some immigrant backgrounds from Asia, some immigrant backgrounds from Middle East, from Africa, from South America. So we're fortunate. Story Warrior, we are like a marketplace. We're sharing ideas, and regardless of people where their origin. Okay. So we'd love to have that link. But
yeah.
go ahead, talk to us about our conference.
So when we came together, we realized that we had an opportunity, and I have to tell you that I still think about it today. It's hard to have identified, sort out the quality of the people that are part of the Agna family. We just are dedicated and motivated to wanting to give back. It's just so unique. Nobody gets paid. We volunteer our time and effort, both in what we do here and what we do in Cameroon.
So as president, they don't give you no stipend for all the work you do?
No, no stipend as well. And we put together resources. We speak to. I cannot say that we only depend on Agna for the things that we do. We've had significant support from the Diversity Nurse Anesthesia Program, which is another organization that supports diversity and education into the profession. We work with the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists, which we call the AANA. The president, Dr. Sednor, is going to be speaking at our conference in Dallas as well.
That's amazing.
We work with leaders. The president-elect of the Texas Association of Nurse Anesthetists will be there as well, meeting with us, as well as other leaders within the profession. And then we're going to also invite, which is what we typically do, people whose education and experience can benefit the foundations, both professionally and personally, of the nurse anesthetist at our conference in Dallas. So our foundation initially was a motivation to support those within the community to advance into the anesthesia profession and then give back home. But we have now expanded into actually going back into the community and supporting those who just have the aspiration. If you're an ICU nurse or a nurse, you're curious, this is a place for you to come and learn what the profession is all about. We will have hands-on demonstrations into the things that we do, including equipment as well.
I am very curious. What are some of the specializations within anesthesia that someone who is in the early stages of their nursing career or just getting mature could say, you know what, I want to aspire to move into anesthesia and specialize in this area or that area? There's some specializations, and what are some of the requirements for everyday nurses to get into a program that will help them both move upstream professionally and also move upstream financially? Because I bet financially it can help a lot of people, both here and in the developing world or in the motherland.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question, Dr. Famukwai. What are the specializations in anesthesia? Just like in medicine, you can imagine that there are different surgical types, right? From basic sedation to advanced procedures like heart and brain surgery. Our training in school caters for not specialization, but exposure and experience at the fundamental level to these different surgical areas.
I see.
And there are concentrations or what we call rotations, clinical rotations that emphasize expertise in these areas during the training. But once you graduate, you are supposed to be able to have foundational knowledge and capacity to work in most of the areas. Of course, your exposure and experience, longer experience in some of those areas might be critical. For example, open heart surgery usually tends to have a dedicated team. Neurosurgery sometimes. But the anesthetist has a choice. This is a beautiful thing about our profession. They have the choice to pick an area of specialty. Some people may just want to do gynecology and obstetrics, OBGYN. Other people want to do pediatrics, for example, only with children, and so on and so forth. So there are areas. Some people want to do just endoscopy, work in an outpatient facility for that. So the specialization tends to be a matter of choice, an option, and you can move between one and the other. Nothing holds you down to stay in one area of specialization. Now, to your second question, what are some of the leveling up opportunities is that
or requirements or
that nurses may have in terms of preparing themselves for anesthesia school.
Yes.
Anesthesia profession is a very serious profession. You're actually having in your hands every single day people's lives.
I can not even imagine the kind of pressure you guys go through. I mean, there's nothing probably as critical and life-threatening like what you guys do. But anyway, it's a very, very serious profession. It's a very serious call. It's not even just a calling. It's not just a career. But talk to us about, some of the requirements and how you guys get inducted into that, because it's like, can't afford any mistake. You can't even take a sip of water once you're at work, right?
Of course, you can get a break to go do that, but of course, when you're focused on the patient, you really cannot afford to lose sight of that care, the trust that the patient has when they are going under any form of anesthetic care. So it's people don't come there prepared, right? But there are certain things that you have to do in preparation for the school, the training. The training will take care of your preparation into basic and standard of practice once you're done. But there are certain criteria, and sometimes it's outlined by these schools, like you have to have this and that and that. And most students who are preparing, most nurses who are preparing, I was actually speaking to one of them the other day, who is joining our association as a nurse from the ICU. They would typically want you to be an ICU nurse for about 2 years minimum for most programs. The more experience you have in the ICU, the better your transition into anesthesia.
I see.
It requires critical thinking, very important. There's a way of thinking about anesthesia. They usually and typically, what the critical care nurse sees is the other side of the recovery phase of the operating room. So it gives them an idea of typically the types of medications that we use, how to monitor and assess the patient in the immediate post-operative period. So that helps in terms of the transition. But there are certain things that skills that you may have to also learn. Some schools ask for statistics. Some schools require you to have a GRE. There's a debate around that as to whether it actually pertains to any significant preparatory capacity. And also, but more fundamentally, it's just like you said, it's a very serious profession. It requires you to be on your feet, to think on your feet, to be a critical thinker, to be a leader as well, because after the surgeon in the room, the anesthesia provider is a leader in the operating room. And so being able to advocate for the patient critical as well, and being able to manage the activities in the room is very important. Now, people vary in terms of their individual characters, but other fundamental skills as resiliency.
In a perfect world, nothing ever happens. But we don't live in a perfect world. Every now and then there will be a little hitch. We just experience a little hitch. That is one of those things you don't want to experience in the anesthesia room, because life is of essence, and these are professionals that work extremely hard to make sure that life continuity is there. So, Dr. Tekwe, please take us to a time when you were not yet a nurse, a certified nurse anesthetist. What were you doing, and why did you move into this very prestigious and highly respected area?
Thank you once again, Dr. Fomakwai. In the anesthesia world, we do have setbacks, but we are trained to we are not perfect.
But you're trained to deal with them.
We are trained, and most importantly, we are very proactive. So we tend not to. I always tell the trainees or people with whom we try to inspire to become a nurse anesthetist, that we don't use 95% of what we prepare for. So what we do every day, we are ready. We over prepare because we don't like surprises. You wouldn't want to be surprised.
It's good to know. Not when you have your family member or relative. Now that
So I do have experience, and as I said before, I came from Cameroon, where my training primarily was in languages. It's very interesting.
Yes.
Isn't that the story of most
You're a
immigrants?
linguist.
Uh,
And we
I
make
did
a
English
switch from a
first.
linguist
Yeah, I did
to
study.
pure scientist.
Yeah, English and
Mm.
French, and then studied did a concentration in translation studies, and then I went into, when I came to the United States, I did study undergraduate nursing, and had already known from then that my capacity to want to give back home has to be at a higher level, and so that's why I chose to be a certified registered nurse anesthetist.
But that had to be a lot of vision, because to make a transition from a field that requires very less of scientific knowledge to a field that is deeply steeped into the sciences, I'm sure it was a very painful transition. Can you talk to us about it? Because there may be some people in that arena who are feeling, oh my God, I may be incompetent, I'm not good enough, I'm not born to be this. Talk to us about your vision, your mindset, and making that switch and making it work. Not only work, but work at the level where you're operating at a very, very uh, high level of expertise and initiating and executing projects internationally.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fumkwai. As I mentioned earlier before, I did work as a program director for an international organization back in Cameroon. And part of what we did was also receive people who came to the country on medical missions, and then help them um, uh, actually operationalize their
Mhm.
projects back in Cameroon.
Mhm.
And I was so fascinated by what the doctors and the nurses were able to do on the ground.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I've always been also very curious about the human body. And I
Mhm.
knew then that whatever I was doing in the future, even be it coordinating base or actually being hands-on, will give
Mhm.
me the capacity uh,
Mhm.
to to give back in a much more practical way.
Mhm.
So early on in my stay in this country, I realized that I had the opportunity. I really have to thank God for the opportunity to be here and to be able to
Mhm.
do that
Mhm.
transition, because it's not easy, as you mentioned. So it was
Mhm.
part of part curiosity, part interest,
Mhm.
and the desire to want to give back that led me into,
Mhm.
first of all,
Wow.
nursing, and then into the anesthesia world.
Wow, that is profound. So exposure, curiosity, the desire, and then pay the bills or pay the dues to get into a very competitive area. Getting into anesthesia is very competitive. If my research serves me right, talk to us about how competitive it is and how a candidate can prepare to get into anesthesia.
It's a highly competitive field, and at the training, a large mass of students will not standpoint, as well as exposure to the clinical side. And so for us, it's competitive to get into these schools because the programs are very streamlined, small number of students per class. And
Mhm.
these schools also have to cater to clinical sites or send the students to clinical sites that do not have the capacity to absorb so many students. And they also
Mm.
want not just quantity, but quality in terms of the training and
Quality.
education. So
Mm.
getting into these programs is highly competitive. That's very true. Most people also, we used to think, in some regards, it's still a public secret being a nurse anesthetist. But
Mhm.
there are more schools now being opened, and more people are becoming more aware of this
Mhm.
training opportunity to advance their careers as nurses.
Mhm.
But application is tough, but which is one of the reasons why we started the association to help and guide people into this different across the country. So because you have to be very qualified, you have
Mhm.
to have the capacity to manage to work under very stressful conditions for
Mhm.
long hours sometimes,
Mm.
and have to be thinking on your feet throughout the time.
Mm.
Can't
I
even
see.
have the capacity to work in the operating room.
Mm. Very interesting. Okay. Now, the other thing is you have a major event coming up in Dallas.
Yes.
You want to put a little spotlight on that event, who you're expecting to be there, and then we can wrap this up.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fomukwai. So we are having our seventh annual Congress and fundraiser in Dallas, Texas, from April 11 to 12. And the theme for this year is really quite important for where we are today and what we've been able to accomplish, but where we want to go. The theme is partnering for progress, strengthening our community through education and leadership. Who do we expect in this at this conference? We expect, of course, registered nurse anesthetists, because we will have very impactful educational material for CEU, continuous education credits, which is approved. It's going to be approved by the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists. So you can come there if you you need some of this education and training as well. But just to see what we do, we'd like to share with you part of the conference, also sharing with the world, with the anesthesia profession, what we're doing and how you can join us in what we do together. We will have also SRNAs, which is student registered nurse anesthesiologists from across the country. Some of them will be having poster presentations. That is to say, they have projects during the final phase of their training that they want to show the world, to highlight as part of their coursework, to show the world what they want to contribute, to bring as a contribution to publish as well. And then we're also going to have registered nurses, as I mentioned before, who could be in the ICU for the most part, but just curious, want to know about the profession. They want to know if it is something they can do, and how they will learn from those who are in school, as well as those of us who've been in the profession for a while. And we'll have sessions to talk to them. We'll expose them to some of the equipment that we use in the operating room. They'll have hands-on experience, how to intubate, using a mannequin, and so on and so forth. So then we also have, well-wishers and donors, people who really care about giving back to the community. We're inviting them to come and support us, come and share with us. As I mentioned, we're going to have in our presence both local leaders as well as the state and national leaders in this very important meeting in Dallas.
Very, very insightful. Okay. Let's say someone who is not in anesthesia, like me. I'm just a curious cat. Am I invited? Will I be allowed to come in, or will I be told stay out?
No, of course, everybody is invited.
General public. Okay. All right. That warms my heart. It warms my heart because I appreciate what you guys are putting out there in terms of contribution. I may as well come around and nose around and learn something from you.
That's very true. And we will appreciate, we welcome everybody. Of course, the content, we curated the content to the benefit of anesthesia providers, but there's a lot of material that can also benefit people, because not only are we talking about clinical aspects of anesthesia, we are going to be also diving into some of the fundamentals of leadership, because it's focused on leadership. And some of it is financial leadership, communication leadership, and we'll have experts who are primarily healthcare providers, but there will be, I'm sure you would find it very useful to listen to investment opportunities, right? Because these are some of the areas that some of our guest speakers will be talking about. So how can you, be successful in the operating room, but also what are the opportunities that you may have to invest your hard-earned money, so that we strengthen the person as well as the profession as well.
Okay. I think that is very worthwhile. I'll be there. I'll make the time. So if someone came to you and say, sir, you are very successful, you've worked very hard, you've come a long way from coming from the developing world to breaking into new grounds in America. Obviously, you're guided by your faith and many other important principles. But what is a good book for someone who is having some self-doubt, having some doubts about, can I make it in America? Can I break into new ground? Can I excel? What do you say that's good? That's a good book for someone?
As you can imagine, quite a wide array of potential books, and some of them would inspire other people more than others. What comes to mind, which is, I would say, is an epic in the world of personal development, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But also as an immigrant, and by the way, just want to say thank God for this country, thank God for America. that is giving us the capacity. It's an immigrant nation, but sometimes we need to be reminded of how much blessings there are to be part of this experiment called America. Another book that I would highly recommend is Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way. Because especially because it focuses on resiliency and how to reshape your mindset towards achieving the goals and aspire to becoming the person that you want to become.
The obstacle is the way. All right, I took note of that. So let's say someone walk up to you and say, Dr. Tekwe, what's your superpower? What would you say?
My superpower is knowing who I am and what I want.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Self-awareness and self-pursuit. Okay. All right. This last one here, you walk into a room and there are 4 chairs. The first chair is standing within a circle. The second chair is standing within a triangle. The third chair is standing within a square. And the fourth chair is standing on top of a squiggly. It's kind of like twisted. And these are the only 4 chairs available. Which one of them would you be more encouraged to sit on? The square, the triangle, the circle, or the squiggly?
The triangle.
The triangle. All right. Turns out the triangle is ideal for those who like to take charge. No wonder you're from the world of anesthesia. For those who they tend to make CEOs and they want to have things predictable and controlled in a certain way.
All right.
So thank you. It says a lot. It speaks a lot about your profession. It speaks a lot about what you're giving back to the community. You want things to be predictable. You want things to go in an orderly fashion. And we could not be more grateful for what you do in giving back, because this is out of your own generosity. It's not because anyone can reward you. Thank you so much, Dr. Tekwe. And we look forward to seeing you in Dallas at the conference. Please make room for non-CRNA attendees like my humble self. And do you have any last word?
Oh, no, thank you. I just want to say this is a great opportunity to share with you as well as with the Dallas community, by the way. Come out in numbers to see what we have to offer and support us. But also to our members, thank you, members of ACNA, for your kind contributions through the years. I want to say thank you to donors, supporters, those who have been partnering with us through the years to help us achieve the things that we've been able to achieve. And thank you very highly to Dr. Halia Khanna, the Dean of the Faculty of Sciences, Health Sciences at the University of Boya, as well as, Dr. Beruni, the head of the head and the other leaders with the program that we co-manage at the University of Boya. It's really an incredible journey, and I look forward to sharing some more and contributing as much as I can to the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for continuing to bridge the gap, keep bridging the gap, and keep helping people to stay alive. Thank you, and God bless your work.
Thank you, sir.
Peace.
Thank you. All right.